Hello and welcome to Football Talk by the 2 Point Conversion. My name's Dylan Jackson. Today I'm joined by Jacob LaQuire. Jacob, how you doing?
Doing well. We learned that the Panthers are wearing the black helmets, so that's always the best news you can get. It's kind of a distraction, like it's a gimmick to distract you from the record, but I fall for it every time, so I'm excited.
If they lose, they'll at least look good doing it. I am going to be at that game, Panthers Falcons, on Sunday at 1 o'clock. But we have quite a bit to cover today. There's a lot of injuries. We released the 2 Point Conversion top 10 list. We're going to talk some kind of revelations so far this year, some disappointments. There's a really cool slate of games that we have this week with some big teams matching up against each other, and then we'll get to our takes as well. But first off, we have to plug everything that we can. You can follow the show at 2P_conversion on Twitter. You can follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as Substack, 2pointconversion.com. You can follow my host, Jacob LaQuire, at Jacob LaQuire on Twitter, myself at dj.png. So there are a ton of injuries in the NFL already, the most major of which is Joe Burrow. He has a 3-month, maybe more, long injury with turf toe. He injured it in the, I believe, first or second quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Cincinnati Bengals have kind of been in this situation before many times, actually, with Joe Burrow missing a substantial portion of the season. Jake Browning, probably one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL, but still not an ideal situation for the Cincinnati Bengals, despite their 2-0 start. What are your thoughts on this, Jacob?
Well, it doesn't hurt to have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Chase Brown, like all the weapons they have, I think can help keep the offense afloat. But turf toe's always a rough one. It sounds like it's not a big deal, but it's kind of like tear. It's like if you tore the ligaments in your knee and you put that in your toe. That's kind of what turf toe is. It's like a pretty major injury, and I think 3 months is the baseline for the severity of the strain that he has. So kind of hoping he gets back on time there because I think they're going to need Burrow based on what Jake Browning was able to do in the Jags game. But I think as long as he has the volume like Jameis Winston can provide, like a lot of touchdowns and interceptions, I think they'll be fine to stay around 500. I think that's the hope. I think you would want the defense to play a bit better, but this is certainly the most major injury of all the injuries so far.
While I want to agree with you that I hope that this team, the Bengals are like arguably the most entertaining team in the league. I had them at first in the league pass rankings that I wrote over the summer. Um, the upcoming schedule is just quite brutal for this Bengals team. They play at Minnesota this week, which Minnesota's had their ups and downs so far this year. JJ McCarthy not going to be playing in that game, but still an incredibly talented team. After that, they play in Denver, another tough one. That one's going to be in prime time as well. Then they play the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers on the road, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's 5 teams that all made the playoffs last year, all very, very talented teams. It could get pretty rough during that stretch, but after that, it cools off a bit with the Jets, the Bears. I think they play the Patriots in that sort of range. So not ideal for the Cincinnati Bengals early on.
It's a good thing they got those 2 wins early. Like, we talk about them trying to get out to quicker starts, and this is certainly a setback, but if they can weather the gauntlet of the 5 games you mentioned that they have ahead and come out maybe 3 and 4 or something like that, I think that's as good an outcome as you can hope for.
So some other injuries that we have, these are all, we'll say, short-term injuries with these kind of 4 guys, all quarterbacks, by the way. But Justin Fields ruled out for their Week 3 game. JJ McCarthy is going to be out against the Cincinnati Bengals that we just talked about. Jaden Daniels, it appears that he's going to be missing Sunday's game for the Commanders, will be replaced by Marcus Mariota. And then Brock Purdy, he already missed a Week 2 game against the Saints, but it appears he's going to be maybe playing. It's going to come down to the wire for Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I think the Purdy one looks doubtful. The rest of those guys, I think they have pretty established. Well, even Purdy as well. They all have established backups, right? You have Tyrod Taylor in New York. Carson Wentz is with the Vikings now. Marcus Mariota, of course, and then Mac Jones. I don't think he looked bad against the Saints on Sunday, and it is the Saints, but he was putting the moves on some of the defenders. He was making good plays, so I think all of the teams, even the Bengals included, have backups in place to be able to facilitate. It's just going to be tough when you're missing guys like Justin Fields who bring the rushing element, or Jaden Daniels who was the rookie of the year last year. There's going to be a step down, but I think all of them have capable backups at least.
Kyle Shanahan got his guy,
He-
Mac Jones.
And it looked good.
It did look good. They beat the Saints. It was close, kind of too close at the end. I know we had some Spencer Rattler takes at the end. Um, I know I like what I saw, but again, I might be a little bit biased with him. But let's go ahead and get to the 2-point conversion top 10 list for week 3. I don't think it's been revealed to this point yet on the website or anywhere. So this is going to be kind of the unveiling of it. Um, as always, the 2-point conversion staff votes on their top 10 teams, and then an average is taken um, to include each and every team that the staff voted on. So, without further ado, number 1 is the Green Bay Packers. This was the only unanimous selection, number 1 overall. This is up from number 3, which they were last week. The Buffalo Bills, they are number 2. 3, the Philadelphia Eagles. 4, Baltimore Ravens. 5, the LA Chargers climb up to this spot. 6, the Detroit Lions. They were the first team out in last week's edition. 7, the Los Angeles Rams. They were 10th last week. 8, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 9, the Kansas City Chiefs. They fell from number 5 last week. And then 10 is the Washington Commanders. What are your immediate takeaways?
It's interesting that we have an 0-2 team within the top 10. I keep feeling like we have to give KC the benefit of the doubt, but it is looking a little spooky with them. Green Bay makes sense, right? They're a favorite among a lot of people, especially us at the 2-point conversion. Buffalo makes sense. They were able to take care of business even with Josh Allen leaving the game a couple of times. I think he either fractured or broke his nose. He had to come out quite a bit to plug his nose. But I think he's okay for this week. I'm trying to see, like, the Rams are like an interesting team. I think on my list I had them at 9, and in that group between 6 and 10, everybody has the same teams kind of jumbled up. I want to see how they play this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that's going to be a big game. And then the Chargers, I guess, is my last takeaway. They've earned that 5 spot. Like, outside of Baltimore and Buffalo, I think they've really established themselves as so far the third best team in the AFC.
So I want to start with the Chiefs here because I think that they're maybe the most intriguing case here, being the only 0-2 team, as you mentioned. I mean, it's really hard to discount just the talent that Patrick Mahomes is. Honestly, like, you could call him the most underrated player in the NFL, and I wouldn't really disagree with it. He's kind of just dragged that offense to nearly 40 points so far this season. There's just the most explosive player on that offense so far this year has been Tyquan Thornton, which kind of goes to show you where this skill position group is without Rashid Rice, without Xavier Worthy. The running backs on this team have really, really struggled. Pacheco has not looked good so far this year. Kareem Hunt is another year older, and I'm kind of surprised he's still getting NFL carries. But yeah, it lacks the explosion, the ability to kind of take the top off the defense that this team once had. Like, I think the biggest asset of Xavier Worthy's game in particular is that he stretches the field in a way that creates space for other receivers, and in doing so, it really just opens up things for this offense, that intermediate level of the field. And right now, things just feel so tight for the Chiefs. Last year, they were like arguably, I think they were the best team just from a down to down success rate, if I'm not mistaken. But They were also the worst in terms of explosive play rate, if I'm not mistaken. So, taking away what little explosive plays this offense did have in Xavier Worthy and an aging Travis Kelsey, it really is hindering their ability to just score effectively on offense. It's basically just Patrick Mahomes dragging this team to 17 points a game.
Do we know if Worthy's going to play this week? I know it was kind of week to week following the week 1 injury, and they're going to have a little bit more time given that that was on a Friday a couple weeks ago. If he plays, I think that's a huge boost for the offense that's going against a Giants team that suddenly can score points. So I think Worthy being back this week is going to be a big sticking point for that game. Sunday Night Football, by the way, the Giants and Chiefs.
Great. This is going to be such a great game. So Worthy had no limitations in practice today. So it seems as though he's going to be good to go on Sunday night against the Giants.
Yep, there you go. That's going to be a huge boost. Just like Travis Kelsey in each game has dropped would be go ahead touchdown, or like in the Chargers game, they wouldn't have gone ahead. They would have been tied. But he's dropped important catches 3 yards away from the end zone. And they just need a consistent ball winner. Maybe Tyquan Thornton can do that as the season goes on. But they really need Worthy back because quietly toward the end of last year, he was really, really good. Even in the Super Bowl, he was really good. They were just getting blown out, so you couldn't really tell.
Yeah, if he does play, he's going to be playing with a fully torn labrum, which I think it's going to matter less for Xavier Worthy than it would for other players, just because of the field stretching ability that Worthy brings. Like, I don't think people realize, but the most value that Worthy provided last year wasn't even with the ball in his hands or being targeted. Honestly, it was just the threat of him kind of beating corners downfield and creating spacing for other receivers. So it's a big, big win for this Chiefs offense just to have him on the field. Maybe they design some sweeps to him, some easy touches to where he doesn't have to necessarily bring the ball above his heads to make those catches. So Xavier Worthy, I'm excited to watch him this season. The Chargers, I also wanted to talk about just quick here. I would probably go out on a limb and say that if the season ended after just 2 games, Justin Herbert would probably be the MVP right now if I had to make a pick. He's just been playing on an otherworldly level, both in the Chiefs game and then early on in the Raiders game specifically. He has been that Chargers offense entirely. Like, the run game has been so poor for the Chargers. We'll talk about the Chargers a little bit later in one of the other segments, but I just wanted to make a point that they're pretty solidly that 5th team right now in the NFL.
Yeah, it's funny. The 1 year that they draft the rookie running back, Greg Roman decides to go away from the power run game and
Yeah.
just unleash Justin Herbert. He's running a little bit, so maybe that's the wrinkle in the run game, but he's been playing really, really well. And I think the team is good as a whole, but he's the reason that they've won both games.
For sure. So with that, we've covered the 2-point conversion top 10. I want to talk about the biggest revelations of the NFL season so far. So we both came to the table with one revelation, one kind of thing that we didn't necessarily expect coming into the season. I'll let you kind of set the table with your pick here.
This is one that we talked about. I think both of us were expecting the Atlanta Falcons to get off to a slow start, might end up with some people in leadership positions being fired because of it. And I think the defense was the main sticking point there. But to start the season, the first 2 weeks, and I know it's a 2 week sample size, but the Atlanta defense has been otherworldly. They lead in what's called havoc plays. So that's like pressure, sacks, interceptions, fumbles, hits on the quarterback. They're the leaders in the clubhouse across the entire league. All of the additions on defense, the young rookies, Jalen Walker and James Pierce, both of them have a sack. Leonard Floyd looks the best that he has in 4 or 5 years now. Both of the young defensive backs that they had in the draft, Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman Jr., believe both of those guys have an interception, both courtesy of J.J. McCarthy, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just all of the players with Jeff Ulbrich now calling the defense. it's like a new vision for that group, and they're all coming together, coalescing, and putting on the field like a competent unit. Not even competent, like a good unit. And I think as Panthers fans, it's going to be an interesting test to see next week if this is like a 2-week sample size or if this Atlanta defense is actually really, really good.
The rookies on this defense, all four of them look really, really good so far. I know James Pierce, uh, going into training camp and really coming into the preseason, had the most hype of any of these rookies by far. They were talking about how he was just unblockable in practice, and um, he's had like moments this year so far where he looks to be, I don't know, a future like above average defensive end, maybe even better than that. Somebody that can really affect the passing game, and I think he's had like 1.5 sacks so far this year, if I'm not mistaken. And Jalen Walker too. I've been really impressed with him, particularly in the Vikings game. He had a few reps, obviously one sack. He just kind of beat the tackle around to JJ McCarthy, and also had a few really solid run defense reps, which if you listen to this podcast during draft season, I think we were both of the opinion that Jalen Walker was an elite weak side run defender. That kind of showed itself against the Vikings. So I am pretty huge on those two guys. I know the Falcons gave up, a future first round pick to get James Pierce, but at least in the short term, it doesn't look like the worst decision in the world, albeit it's still only 2 games in. There's a lot that could happen the rest of the year, but James Pierce does look to be worth, a first round pick minimum. So I'm excited about those two guys, and really kind of the story I think of this defense has been the two safeties that they added. Obviously, Jesse Bates was already in the secondary, AJ Terrell already in the secondary as well, but Xavier Watts has been sneakily one of the best rookies across the entire NFL. Had a pick in week 1. And I think was incredibly useful to this team in week 2 against the Vikings as well. Billy Bowman, you mentioned, got a pick as well. So those were the first 4 picks of the Atlanta Falcons draft class. And I know we were talking about it in the 2-point conversion chat that we have, how the Falcons were on pace to start 4 rookies, 2 of which were not first round picks. And so far, it kind of looks to be turning around this unit, maybe making it more so, taking it from a bad unit to an average unit. But that's still, like, considering where this Falcons defense has been, not just last year, but over the past decade, half decade, that is a huge, huge improvement.
It took them 8 games last season to register 6 sacks. They already have 7 through 2 weeks. Like the pass rush can't be understated how much it's improved. There is a caveat, I would say. Both the Vikings and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who they played in week 1, are both missing their all-pro level left tackles and Wirfs and Christian Darrisaw with the Vikings, but still really good performance from everybody. The incumbent guys as well, like Arnold Ebiketie is playing well. All of the interior defensive line guys that are in year 2 or year 3, they're stepping it up. So it's going to be an interesting next few weeks to see if this is real or if it was more so we played teams without a left tackle.
I know we kind of killed them for letting Grady Jarrett walk in free agency, or not just letting him walk, but just cutting him from the team in general. But Jarrett has been, like, I think, a pretty clear negative on that Bears team so far this year. And Rook Aurora actually looks to be like a really solid player despite some rookie struggles. So the young talent on this defensive line actually is super exciting if you're a Falcons fan, and kind of looks to be turned around despite some, people have killed the Falcons for a lot of different reasons over the past few years, but the decision making from Terry Fontenot, especially, that Rook pick, obviously the James Pierce and Michael Penix picks as well. So it doesn't look to be all doom and gloom so far, but again, only 2 games into the season. I don't know why I said years, but if you're a Falcons fan, I think there's a lot of cause for optimism early this year. So with that, I want to get to kind of the next revelation. This one's mine. And this Indianapolis Colts offense has been insane so far this year. They've started 2-0. They got a win against Denver last week, 29-28 final score there. Obviously, they beat the Miami Dolphins. I think the score was like 33-8 in that game. But long story short, the Colts just beat one of the best teams, or excuse me, best defenses in the NFL with Daniel Jones at quarterback. And this is an offense that, we kind of lauded their weapons: Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Downs, AD Mitchell. I know we're pretty high on Alec Pierce as well. There's a lot of different skill players in this offense, and I think two of those guys are playing just elite football right now between Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren, the 14th overall pick this past year. This offense looks completely transformed with just, the bare minimum at quarterback, really, in terms of competency and reliability with Daniel Jones. So it is a contract year for him, which, has been it's benefited him before to kind of perform in a contract year. We'll put it that way. But this Colts team looks completely transformed on offense. Shane Steichen's play calling has really been impressive. And I mentioned Justin Herbert as an MVP candidate, but I would also probably throw Jonathan Taylor in there as well.
Taylor's playing like the best running back in football right now.
Yeah.
I think he leads the league in rushing yards. The performance he had against the Denver Broncos was otherworldly. Like, he turned back the clock 5 years. That's how good he was. Tyler Warren, if it weren't for Tedero McMillan, I would say he's the best rookie pass catcher so far. He's
Yeah.
been all over the field. He took a couple like not direct snaps, but running reps. Not the best there, but as a pass catcher, he's just doing everything. Daniel Jones, like you said, is the the paragon of competency within the Shane Steichen system. Like, as long as he keeps doing the right thing, the offense is good enough to beat anybody. Like, we saw it now. Maybe Denver's defense isn't as good as you and I both thought it was, but it's still a good unit, like a top 10 unit at worst, I would say. And they were able to rattle off the win. Even if it were like a quote fluky win with the leveraging penalty, they were still hanging in there and they got it done. And then in week one, obviously they blow the Dolphins out of the water, just showing what they could be. To me, I know Daniel Jones is going to be the sticking point because the offense is the story, but I think the Colts defense really improved over like year over year from last year. The addition of Cam Bynum has been huge. He has an interception in both games. It was Charvarius Ward, the corner they added. I think that was like the weakness of this defense was the secondary. I think they both bring a level of like experience to the back end of the ball. Leitu Latu's playing really well. The defensive front is playing well, and the linebackers, I think, were kind of the spot we all had concerns with. They aren't the worst in the league to start the season. So I think if the defense continues to play well, I know that Shane Steichen can still get a lot out of this offense. This Colts team could be a team that has a chance to win the division if they keep this up.
I know there's been a lot of people impressed with this Colts team, but do you think that they have a shot at becoming a playoff team, whether it's winning the AFC South or just being a wild card bid?
For sure. I mean, you could look at the Broncos as a team that could be in that wild card conversation as well, and they just beat them, right? I know it's a little early for tiebreakers and stuff like that, but if you're able to beat teams that are like competent level teams, this was in Indianapolis, right? The game that they just played against Denver. So I don't think they went to Denver, but they're still beating teams that are in that wild card, or from our perspective, in the group that could win their own division. So I think that if they continue to play this way, they could easily get a wild card spot, or even, like I said, have a chance to win the AFC South.
This team is going to, over their next 5 games, play against the Chargers, the Rams, and the Cardinals. Those 3 teams are all 2-0 at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So they'll have some tests coming up, but they do play in the AFC South, which is going to greatly benefit them. There is a very, very strong chance they start the season 3-0, as they have a noon game against Tennessee on Sunday. So I'm super excited about where this team is going. It's like shockingly one of the most entertaining teams in football right now, which, if you told me that was the case just a month ago that the Colts would be 2-0 with a win against Denver and one of the more entertaining teams in the NFL right now, I probably wouldn't believe it. So I'm
Where were
just
they on the league pass rankings?
I if I had a link to it, I would look it up. But they were definitely probably towards the bottom of the league pass rankings.
Well, if they keep this up, they're going to be toward the top once it gets to like mid-season or something like that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm still very, very skeptical of a Daniel Jones led offense. I think it's somewhat of a ticking time bomb. Like, how long is this really going to last? Like, he's put up two performances. I think he's like second in the NFL in passing yards right now. He hasn't really made any major mistakes. So, um, I'm very impressed with him so far, but I still like at some point it's got to come crashing down, right?
Yeah. I just pulled it up if you want to know. They were 29th on the it was red zone rankings is how
Red
we
zone rankings, yeah.
yeah, trademarked red zone rankings, but they were 29th. I think they've certainly moved up at least 10 or 15 spots in the first couple weeks.
Number one on that list, by the way, the Cincinnati Bengals, who would probably be a lot lower without Joe Burrow. But um, let's get to the next segment. We're going to talk about the disappointments so far this NFL season. Obviously, there's a plethora of teams that are 0-2. I think it's like the most 0-2 teams in quite a while. I think there's like 10 0-2 teams, which I think I saw a stat saying that there's more than usual. But obviously, the Chiefs are 0-2. Neither of us picked the Chiefs to talk about. Maybe it's because their schedule has been so difficult. But what's been your disappointment so far this year, or I guess biggest one?
I was going to pick the Chiefs, but when Worthy got hurt on the third play and Rashid Rice is suspended and they went up against some tougher opponents already, I think there's a little bit of slack I can cut them for going 0-2, even though they should be at least 1-1 right now. I had the Chicago Bears. They're one of the 0-2 teams, and while they weren't a Super Bowl team like the Chiefs were, I think the expectation was that when Ben Johnson came in, they would be able to hit the ground running. I know it would take time for everything to coalesce, but they had all the weapons. They revamped their interior offensive line. The defense looked decent in week one, but still an 0-2 start. 0-2 in the division as well, losing both to the Vikings and the Lions. So it's basically over for them already in terms of winning the division. Caleb Williams, there was improvement from game one to game two, but I still don't think he looks like what they expected from a number one overall pick. I think a lot of the concerns from last season haven't really changed. They spent a top 10 pick on a tight end over Tyler Warren. They picked Colston Loveland, who I think to date has like 15 total yards. He's not really being utilized in Ben Johnson's scheme, which is weird because like he was Ben Johnson's pick, right? The Lions the Lions scored 52 points on that Bears defense. And the Lions don't have Ben Johnson anymore. They don't have a lot of the offensive coaches, and it doesn't lead me to believe. But then I'm starting to have questions in my mind, like how much of the Lions offense was Ben Johnson if they're able to score 52 or rattle off 50-point performances consistently. And then the last disappointing thing I would say is while the defense was in control for the majority of the game against the Vikings, they allowed JJ McCarthy to come back and really dominate that fourth quarter. The Atlanta defense, that we talked about 20 minutes ago, just destroyed JJ McCarthy the entire game. They didn't allow a shred of a hope of a comeback, and the Chicago Bears allowed that at the end. So I guess I'm just a bit disappointed about how Caleb Williams isn't coming along as quickly, how all of the weapons that are in this scheme. I didn't even mention Luther Burden, who's barely seen the field either, the second round pick. I think he and the other second round pick, Ozzie Trapilla, were inactive in week two. That's a Ryan Poles masterclass there. All the weapons haven't really been utilized to their greatest effects, except for Roma Dunze. That's the caveat I have there. The offensive line additions, the interior guys, they haven't really been stalwarts in terms of keeping pressure away. The defense isn't the best in the league, and they just allowed 52 points from Ben Johnson's former team. So I guess just all of that culminating to an 0-2 start in the division, I think is a pretty big disappointment.
It really does look like nothing Ryan Poles did this offseason worked. You already mentioned kind of the disappointment that Colston Loveland and Luther Burden have been so far early in the season. Ozzy Trapillo, Shamar Stewart, I don't even think they saw the field on Sunday. I think the the rookie that got the most run, and I might be completely wrong about this, is Ruben Hippolyte, who I think had a few tackles against Detroit. But other than that, it hasn't looked amazing for this draft class. I know tight ends take a while to develop, and obviously Luther Burden is kind of buried behind a trio of receivers in Chicago right now. But it hasn't really looked good from a team building perspective, and I'm kind of shocked that Ryan Poles got extended when he did, because what has he done to warrant an extension other than a trade that was handed to him on a silver platter in 2022? And even then, he's kind of squandered the assets that he was given in that trade by the Carolina Panthers. Like DJ Moore kind of looks disengaged a little bit on this team. Obviously, Darnell Wright, I think, has been quite the disappointment for a first round tackle so far. He's had his moments, don't
A
get me
top
wrong.
10 tackle as
A
well.
top 10 tackle. I think he was, I might be, I'm not going to say that he was the top tackle in that draft class. Um, yeah, because you had Paris Johnson taken with the sixth overall pick by the Cardinals that year. But Darnell Wright has been really, really disappointing. Obviously, there's a huge left tackle problem. Braxton Jones just hasn't quite been that guy, and obviously they don't trust Ozzy Trapillo to be that guy early on. I actually thought that Caleb Williams looked much, much better in the second game than he did the first game, but when you're playing from so far behind pretty early in a game, it's easy to just kind of take the easy stuff. He had some really crazy throws that worked, some didn't. And I think that Roma Dunze has probably been the best bear so far this year. Like, he's been really awesome in creating separation. And I think Ben Johnson kind of knows what he has with Roma Dunze, but outside of him and maybe Jalen Johnson, it's pretty rough in terms of this Chicago Bears team in terms of talent.
And Jalen Johnson, the corner we're talking about here, I believe was just ruled out for the rest of the season with a groin injury. I
The
think that came across the
season. Oh, I
timeline today.
did not know
Um,
that.
I could be mistaken, but I think that's what I saw. I know he missed game one and the majority of game two as well.
Let's see.
Um, but I think it's the rest of the season.
Yeah, yeah. Rest of the season
And
per
he's
Jordan Schultz.
a Pro Bowl level corner, I believe. I think
Yeah,
he was named to the Pro Bowl last year. Really big loss there, and I think you mentioned it when Ryan Poles traded with Scott Fitterer, the Panthers GM at the time. They really got like a stimulus package to rebuild or like restart the Bears, right? They got the first overall pick the following year from Carolina. They got a top 10 pick in Roma Dunze with the ninth. I mean, that was their own pick, but they still landed a top 10 pick. They got DJ Moore. I think there's a second round pick as well that we sent to him, and then another second round pick 2 years ago, the Jonathan Brooks year. So they've really had the resources to make it work, and they just haven't been able to do it. Brian Poles really hasn't done anything correct other than trade with Scott Fitterer, who, if you look at his record, is not the best trader. Like, you go back to the Sam Darnold, the Baker Mayfield trades. At the time, the Baker Mayfield trade, in hindsight, is probably a good trade. It was like a fifth round pick, but all the trades he did really, like, winning that kind of trade doesn't quantify as a good thing when it's something you're supposed to do, in my opinion. And if this continues and they get off to another, they're 5-12 last year, I think. If they end up 5-12 again, or 6-10 with no notable growth with Caleb Williams year over year, I think the Ryan Poles experiment has failed, or not experiment. Like, he's been there what, 6 or 7 years now. Like, I don't know how you move on from this if you can't right the ship this season.
they traded for Montez Sweat. I think it
Mhm.
was Ryan Poles that made the trade for Chase Claypool.
The
To
32nd overall pick.
32nd overall pick. Didn't that pick become somebody like really good
It was
too?
Joey Porter.
Joey Porter. That's probably one he wants back. But um, yeah, I come back to, I cannot believe that the Bears actually extended him when they did. Um, yeah, I still am somewhat optimistic for this Bears team. I figured that they would start slow, especially offensively. There's some kind of red flags to me. The most major is like just the run game for the Bears. I think is by far the worst in the league. They cannot move the ball on the ground whatsoever. DeAndre Swift, I know it was fun for like a season in Philadelphia, maybe like a, you know, 6 or 7 game stretch in Detroit, but he really is just not a great, you know, bell cow running back. Honestly, he's probably not even the best running back on that team. I think they have 1 or 2 guys better than him. It's just, you know, the in terms of vision and hitting the hole and just taking what your offensive line gives you, I think they have guys better suited to do that than him. And I know that probably drives Ben Johnson insane, but I think it's going to be a work in progress. Obviously, 0-2, and you lose by an incredible amount of points against the Bears. But you know, before the season, I had that prediction that I think the Bears are going to start like 0-5. And it looks good so far. We're almost halfway there, but I still think at some point things are going to click for not just the offense, but the team as a whole. And, you know, maybe they'll win in like 6, 7 games. But I'm still somewhat cautiously optimistic about this Bears team.
I think Caleb Williams is the focal point, obviously, and I think he can improve over last year. What do you think is we'll call it a successful season for this team this year in terms of wins? Because if they're going to lose the first five, and I think that's a fair take, is like 6 or 7 wins what you expect? And I feel like with all the investment they've had in the team in this offseason, I feel like they wanted more out of the season. What would you call like a successful season for this group?
So I'm going to read off their schedule for you. Um, I think there's actually like several winnable games down the stretch. So their next three are Dallas, Las Vegas, and Washington. Those are probably all going to be L's for this team. After that, they play New Orleans, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and the Giants. I think they could potentially beat New Orleans and New York. Maybe Cincinnati. We'll see if they get Jake Browning on a bad day. Then after that, it's Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Green Bay. That's probably 0-4 right there. Then Cleveland, Green Bay again, San Francisco, and Detroit. So depending on if Detroit's not playing for anything in week 17, I think they could beat them. Cleveland, maybe rip one away from Minnesota later in the year. If things are a little bit more improved for Chicago. And then I think they'll pull off an upset somewhere else on the schedule. So I think that's probably the pathway to like 5 to 7-ish wins.
But I guess like is if they go 5-12 again, is that acceptable? Like for Ryan Poles, given that they were 4-2
Yeah,
to start last year, you got to remember, and then they lost 10 in
yeah.
a row.
I
Um,
think it's more than acceptable if you're Ben Johnson, right?
yeah,
If you're Ryan Poles, I mean that's the issue with extending him when they did is that they basically ensure that he's going to be there for at least maybe another year after 2025. So um, I'm not sure how much he's sweating, but at this point, they've spent so much money on so many. Like this is his roster now.
mhm.
Like all of these guys are players that he signed, players that he's brought in, and if they're not, then they're cornerstones of the franchise. So um, I really struggle to see kind of the impact that he's made in kind of a positive way. But I think Ben Johnson will be fine. I still believe in Caleb Williams. I know week 1 was rough. I think week 2 is better. I just think it's going to get better with time in this Ben Johnson offense. But it is a disappointment. I 100% agree with you there. It's just I'm just a little bit more optimistic that Ben Johnson's going to figure things out with this offense.
Yeah, and I think it's less of a disappointment than your team that we'll talk about because we kind of expected a slower start, right? I just didn't expect like getting 52 hung on you from your former team. In Ben Johnson's case, that's like a hard one to shake.
Right. And kind of talking about that next team, my biggest disappointment was the Houston Texans. And they've had like a tough early season schedule. Obviously, they lose to the Rams in week one. It's a pretty low scoring game. They lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football in week two. This team has only scored 28 points so far this season, 19 points in week two, 9 points in week one. And that's going to be kind of the focal point for me because I think their defense has been kind of living up to expectations so far. Will Anderson, third in pressures right now. Daniil Hunter, you can feel his impact too. And D'Amico Ryan's like, I think he's done an incredibly admirable job, not only against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but against the Los Angeles Rams. I think that going into the season, many people expected both of those teams to be top 10 offenses. So I really have virtually no issue with kind of the defense and how things have gone on that end. But the offense in particular is just it's been really really bad. CJ Stroud, he's not making all that great of decisions. There were so many turnover worthy plays against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this past week. um, Even when he's pressured, like he's been pressured at the fourth highest rate in the NFL so far. And I'll talk about this offensive line. It's been terrible, but Stroud, he really hasn't gone out of his way to sort of elevate this offense in a way that we've seen previously, especially during his rookie year. Um, and Nick Caley, I wanted to kind of believe in him as an offensive coordinator, but in terms of the run game design, in terms of the way a lot of these players are being used, in terms of knowing that you have as bad of an offensive line as you do, and some of the schemed up looks that you have in terms of downfield passing, it just hasn't looked as cohesive as I would have hoped. I know it's a brand new offense. You're only 2 weeks into it, but it's been just really disappointing so far. I know the offensive line was terrible last year, and we kind of hammered them all off season because the talent level on the O line only got worse, really. But oftentimes with offensive line, if you insert a new play caller, if you have maybe one or two different pieces, it can make all the difference just because of how the offense is called. And it just hasn't quite lived up to what you would have hoped for this Texans team. Um, I think the weapons have been interesting for this Texans team because obviously they trade for Christian Kirk. He's not been healthy so far this year. Tank Dell had just a devastating injury in the latter part of last season, but they still drafted Jalen Noel. They drafted Jaden Higgins with their first pick. I think those two guys were two of their first three picks in this past NFL draft. Jalen Noel just hasn't really been used much on offense. Neither has Higgins really. And I think that those guys being ancillary receiving threats, like that's better than I want to say a lot of different teams in the NFL, even if those guys aren't necessarily proven. I know they like Xavier Hutchinson as well. Dalton Schultz is still here. It's just I'm wondering why we're not seeing those guys get more involved in the passing offense. And I know like Nico Collins is getting essentially every single red zone play tailored up to him, and it hasn't quite worked out to the Texans' benefit so far this year. It's just the cohesiveness of this offense combined with CJ Stroud's decision making so far this year and the offensive line play have really kind of sunk this offense early in the season.
Yeah, it's going to go all, or not all, but it goes back to that offensive line. I think everyone was skeptical about the additions or the improvements, you can say, in that offensive line throughout the offseason. And it looks just as bad as we expected. And that doesn't help CJ Stroud a lot because I think from his rookie year to now, the offensive line has gradually gotten worse, and he himself has gradually gotten worse as well. He's not like the processor that a lot of the McVay, Shanahan quarterbacks that are used to having such bad offensive lines. I think one of the reasons why it worked briefly in Miami is that Tua just instantly got the ball out, right? And while it's thrown to spots sometimes, and it's having Tyreek Hill, it's also like, all right, see and throw, and sometimes it leads to picks, but sometimes it leads to good things. And I don't think CJ Stroud is that quick of a quarterback with that. And so when you have such a bad offensive line, it leads to bad decision making. You saw a lot of like weird decisions in that Tampa Bay game that you're referring to. Like, so I remember one play he threw like a weird spin move while he was in the pocket for no reason. And it's just, I think the more pressure he faces, it's just going to get worse. Having all the receivers that they drafted just doesn't really mean much if the offensive line is going to be as bad as it has been the past couple weeks. And I think that while not getting Jaden Higgins or Jaden Knoll involved isn't the best thing, I really think they need to fix that offensive line. And I don't know how you do it, given that it's already we're in week 3 of the season at this point. But it's just bad, and you can't lean on the run game as much either because Joe Mixon is hurt. Nick Chubb, I think, has played decent coming off the injury a couple years ago, but he's not the superstar he used to be. I'm glad that they used Woody Marks quite a bit in this last game, the rookie from Southern Cal. I think maybe he can be a bit better in the run game, but if they can't build a viable run game, there's going to be constant pressure on CJ Stroud, and I don't know if he has enough in him to elevate when he's constantly facing the pressure. He like that wasn't what he was billed as when he was coming into the league. And if that continues to be the case, the teams that can generate a lot of pressure are just going to have a field day with this Texans offensive line. The defense, however, like you said, has been phenomenal through 2 weeks.
The defense has been good, but yeah, the O line, it's so difficult to talk about offensive line play because it really is like a cohesive unit. There's a lot that goes into it from the quarterback standpoint, the protections aspect, and kind of the coaching aspect as well. None of it looks good right now. None of those aspects look good. They're not picking up on like unblocked pressures. They're not bringing extra blockers in. The pass protection, I think Woody Marks has been better in pass pro than Nick Chubb, and that's why, like, I don't know if people realize this, but Woody Marks played like 60% of the snaps on Monday night. A lot of times, like, they just can't really trust Nick Chubb in pass pro. Woody Marks only had like a carry or two, despite that like 60% figure. Um, they don't have a blocking tight end either. This
Mhm.
Texans team, like they had Brevin Jordan, who's gotten hurt each of the past 2 years. That's supposed to have been the guy for them in terms of just being an extra body that can block. They don't have that anymore, and they haven't had that the past 2 years. And I think that's a big reason as to why they've struggled so much, not only in pass protection, but the run design as well. It's been so poor. Um, I really struggle with this team. I think that CJ Stroud is capable of being a good quarterback, but I'm also not sure that he's somebody that you would want to call protections. There was a rep in this game where Tampa showed out an all-out blitz look. They brought an all-out blitz, and CJ Stroud didn't replace that pressure. There was a hot route; he just didn't throw it for whatever reason. That's kind of just like a common thing with him. Is he just doesn't there's so many misreads with CJ Stroud that I think go under the radar. Combine that with a lot of errant throws as of late, and I like CJ Stroud. I think that he's capable of being a top 10 NFL quarterback, but I don't think he's necessarily what people think he is as a quarterback, even if he does have a lot of talent. So I think that that combination of CJ Stroud, the lack of called protections or effectively called protections, combined with the play caller is just that is a recipe to have the worst offensive line in football.
Yeah, it's not a and it's in stages, right? Every time one thing goes wrong, it trickles down to the next thing.
Right.
With CJ Stroud, I think like even going back to Ohio State, he's been very insulated, right? Like he had a very
Yep.
good offensive line, and we all know the weapons that were there, like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison, Jeremiah Smith for a year, Emeka Egbuka. I think in his rookie year, and despite the fact that a lot of O linemen were hurt that year, Bobby Slowick, the former offensive coordinator, schemed up a ton of protections, a lot
Yes.
of like tight ends blocking, running backs blocking, and that allowed for a lot of downfield plays, longer taking plays. And CJ Stroud has the physical tools to make those happen. But when stuff breaks down, I don't know if he's like the creator that we saw in the Georgia and Ohio State game. Like that was his creating or the game where he showed it. It just hasn't trickled down to the league as much. And I think when they didn't properly insulate that offensive line in the offseason, it was kind of expected that this would happen, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Like Stroud himself, even when there's competent blocking, is still missing things or making errors. And I think that's like a learned experience by having the bad offensive line. And hopefully Nick Caley, the new offensive coordinator, can make some stuff happen and use additional blockers like Slowick was able to do to get Stroud back on track. Because I agree with you, he has the talent to be like in that 6 to 8 range in terms of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But if the line in front of him isn't like protecting him adequately, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that's the really frustrating part is when we got that like super elite version of CJ Stroud his rookie year. It was in an offense where there was a lot of play action, there was a lot of boots, there was a lot of like 8-man protection. Sometimes you'd only see like two guys running for routes, and it worked because he's a hyper accurate quarterback that knows the timing so well in the offense. But when you don't have the requisite blocking, when you don't give him support in that way, it's just going to falter a little bit. And I think it's just a misutilization of kind of the talent on that Texans team. So because of that, I'm very, very wary of this offense. I'm hoping they can figure it out as somebody that has Nico Collins in like basically every fantasy league I'm in. But I'm not super optimistic about this team being like a high flying offense. I think it'll be kind of a a Ron Rivera team, for lack of a better term, where you're just looking to outscore the other team, which your defense is consistently holding to 17 points per game.
Well, for the Texans fans' sake, I hope it's not a Ron Rivera offense. I endured too much of that in the 2010s. The lack of a cohesive run game also compounds this issue. I think that's like a huge part of it as well. But this week, as we get into the game of the week stuff here, the my game of the week is going to have two teams that have really good run games, and that's the Lions at the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Ravens are favored by 5.5. This should be a fun game. Detroit's coming off a 52-point performance, as we alluded to. Baltimore just scored 41 against the Browns. They scored 40 against the Buffalo Bills in the opener. Lamar Jackson has an absurd record against NFC opponents. It's something like 20-2 or 20-1 or something like that. Really, really good against NFC teams. And I think both teams really, really need this win. Obviously, they're both 1-1. They both lose their openers to, I think we can call Super Bowl contenders in the Packers and Buffalo Bills. And I think this can be one of the better offensive matchups, at least early in the season, given that the Ravens have a combined 81 points through 2 games, and Detroit just put forth like a masterclass offensive game, getting every single weapon involved. I wonder if the Lions have already beaten the brain drain allegations, losing Ben Johnson, losing Aaron Glenn. And I think for the Ravens' sake, Derrick Henry was awesome in week 1 up until that fumble. And then last week, he just didn't do much. I think if they can get him to bounce back, that's going to be huge for the Baltimore Ravens. But I think this is going to be a very run centric game, but could still score a lot of points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a game where you would want to take the under on the total. I don't know what the total is for what it's worth. I would assume like, I don't know, 46.5 or something. But yeah, I mean, you have two really, really fun running attacks, one with Jameer Gibbs, another with a kind of two-headed monster of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. I'm super excited about this game. I'm so happy it's Monday Night Football. As somebody that's going to be on being in an NFL stadium, I'm not sure like my availability to watch any of the Sunday games really. So I'm going to be excited to kind of tune into Lions Ravens on Monday Night Football. But yeah, I mean, the reality is one of these teams is going to be 1-2 going into week 4, and for both of these teams, you had aspirations of being like the number one overall seed in the conference, and that's certainly not the start that would possibly contribute to that sort of outcome at the end of the year. So um, I think I favor the Ravens. Obviously, they're at home. I have less doubts about them. Obviously, like if any of you have listened to kind of the preseason takes, preseason prediction show, I was pretty much all about the Ravens in terms of my Super Bowl winner, my MVP pick. Pretty much everything was going in that direction, so I'm not wavering away from that. But this Lions team, I think they disproved a lot of you called them allegations with the brain drain, and I would agree with that. Just I mean, it's hard to put up 50 points in the NFL, especially against a Bears team that I think, we've talked about their offensive struggles, but I think people really liked the talent on their defense, at least. And for the Lions to go out there and make it look just effortless in that game, I think they're pretty far back, I would say, as compared to what we saw week 1 against the unanimous number 1 team on the 2-point conversions top 10 rankings. So I'm going to go with the Ravens here. I think they will cover the 5.5-point spread, but I am hoping for some fireworks here.
I'm going to pick the Ravens as well. Like I mentioned, Lamar Jackson just doesn't really lose to NFC teams. These two teams were in the Final Four 2 seasons ago. This was actually the what I wanted to be the Super Bowl was Ravens and Lions. And of course, it had to be Chiefs and 49ers again for some reason. But hopefully, this can be just as good a game as a potential Super Bowl if these two were in it.
I agree. I just this is one of the games that we circled when the NFL schedule came out as potentially like one of the best matchups in the NFL across the entire season. So it's certainly like maybe the biggest or maybe two of the most talented teams, if not the two most talented teams in the NFL going up against each other. But the game that I want to talk about next is the Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but Justin Herbert, I think, has been playing at an MVP level, and the Broncos just gave up nearly 500 yards to the Colts. This is despite me personally thinking that the Broncos had the most talented defense in the NFL. And really, like, this passing attack has been super high flying. Quentin Johnston has been weirdly like incredible so far this year in his kind of downfield stretching role. Keenan Allen turned back the clock just a little bit. Lad McConkey, it's taken him a little bit longer to get going, but you can still see the talent is super clear with him. And obviously, I'm a huge believer in Amari and Hampton as well. It sucks that this team no longer has Rashawn Slater for the year. It looks like Khalil Mack is going to miss a pretty substantial amount of time. That's arguably the Chargers' like number 2 and number 3 players in terms of talent on this roster, unfortunately. But I still think that Justin Herbert can kind of carry this team. I think the Chargers are going to end up beating the Broncos, but I have concerns about kind of where this Broncos team is, considering Bo Nix's pretty horrendous start to the season. Like I thought he would be a little bit better, and he's turned the ball over a lot. He hasn't been super efficient. I like what Troy Franklin gave this offense last week, but it's a little bit troubling considering I thought this offense would be kind of fully Sean Paytonized, and it hasn't quite lived up to what I was expecting.
We might get there if Sean Payton remembers that RJ Harvey is on the roster.
That's right.
He for some reason he's a big J.K. Dobbins guy. Tyler Batty had a lot of carries as well in the Colts game. Real quick before I get into this game, who do you think should have been assigned that fumble between Herbert and Amari and Hampton? Because in one of my fantasy leagues, it was initially given to Hampton and the guy lost, but they reversed it overnight and he won by .08 because they gave it to
Wow.
Herbert.
I lean Hampton because it looks like he moved a little bit too soon out of that handoff, and instead of like fully grasping it. Um, I would lean Hampton, but I mean, realistically, it's probably both of them.
Yeah, it's just it was really unfortunate. I woke up to like 50 messages on Sleeper because they were arguing back and forth. But
That's a rough way to lose. I mean,
yeah,
any sort of stat correction is pretty rough. Sleeper had another one. I think it was like the Seahawks defense was given an extra 6 points because of that touchdown recovery against the
oh, against
Steelers.
the Steelers. Caleb
So,
Johnson, by the way,
oh,
don't think he's seeing the field for the next handful of games. After that, might be worse than the Brian Callahan quote
quick
about not
aside,
knowing the
like
rules.
that might be the single worst rookie mistake I've ever seen.
Uh, I'm trying to think, but it was really, really bad. It's like he basically gave up a 70 or they kick off from the 35 yard, right? A 65-yard onside
Yeah,
kick, which is insane. But with this game in particular, all the rookie running backs, by the way, haven't had the cleanest of starts. I would say Genty has
no,
been going up against it because his blockers don't do him any favors. But beyond that, I think Bill Krosky Merritt is the highest rusher among rookie running backs. But this game
crazy.
features two of them that we have a lot of interest in, and Amarian Hampton and RJ Harvey. I know both of those guys were really high in the dynasty rankings that you and Chandler did following the draft, and hopefully they both have good games. This game has a lot of implications, right? Whoever wins this, I believe, just is up in the division. Maybe the Chargers are still up because they're 2-0 in the division if they lose this one, but should be a good game. I think the Broncos defense can bounce back from what happened last week. Like you said, they allowed nearly 500 yards to the Colts, who, again, really good team so far, but we didn't expect them to be this good. I think the Broncos defense is uniquely talented to deal with the Chargers because while Joe Alt is on a tear, he can really stymie Nick Bonito. They have a lot of guys on that defensive front. I think Zach Allen can be a game wrecker, especially if Mekhi Becton misses time again or if he's in and out of the lineup. I don't know who I'm going to pick here. I think I lean the Chargers just because Herbert's been playing at a very high level. And like you said, Bo Nix, I don't think he's regressed. I think he just hasn't taken the step that we wanted him to see. I think he, like at this point, I think we know he's a system QB. That's not an insult or anything, but I don't think he's evolved to be a high level system operator like Brock Purdy is for the 49ers. But if he can turn it around and improve a little bit, if Sean Payton can use RJ Harvey for my fantasy purposes, I think the Broncos do have a chance here. But I think ultimately I'm going to lean the Chargers.
Quick note here: Lad McConkey did not practice today with a looks like a
Well,
biceps
they
injury.
played
So
Monday as well, so
yeah,
it's kind of iffy there. But if he misses time tomorrow, that could be cause for concern. One thing I will say though is you mentioned it. He's not really been the focal point of the passing game on offense. I think Greg Roman's done a good job, and Herbert has done a good job spreading the ball around. Quentin Johnston looks like a first round pick now. Keenan Allen, if you would have told me he would be playing at this level after what I watched last year with the Bears, I would have told you you're crazy. I thought he was going to retire after leaving the Bears, but he's been playing really, really well. And I think the offense as a whole is just more diversified. Uh, if they could fix the run game, that'd be pretty cool. I'm talking about the Chargers here because Greg Roman's like the run game guy. And the 1 year that they draft the rookie running back, they're going away from it. So hopefully they can make the offense more complementary. But I think the Chargers are still a really, really good team as a whole. Like we mentioned, they were fifth, I believe, on the 2 point conversion top 10. And I think ultimately they have the slight advantage in this game.
I it's like this is the least Greg Roman offense this like ever that I've seen that he's run. And I know he's been in like the this Chargers team obviously and the Ravens before that, but it's just funny to see how this offense has been like complete downfield passing attack so far this season as compared to just like this power run 30 plus carries a game type of offense that it's been previously. So I'm hoping he fixes the run game so that my Amari and Hampton takes can look a little bit better. But speaking of those takes, we are going to get to our last segment now, where we grade each other's takes. Jacob, take it away.
I have to go a little bit on the homer side here. Tedero McMillan, I think, will get his first of many touchdowns this season this week against the Atlanta Falcons. AJ Terrell, if I'm not mistaken, has already been ruled out. He's their best cover corner, and he's up and down sometimes, but he still does a better job as a corner covering than a lot of the DBs do. Granted, they have some young DBs there that both have interceptions now, so that might be different. The Panthers have kind of been designing stuff for T Mac in the red zone at least. There's like a weird fade, like a look over fade that he and Bryce Young didn't connect. They've been scheming stuff up, and it hasn't materialized yet. But I think Dave Canales, the head coach, wants McMillan to have his touchdown. T Mac, if I'm not mistaken, leads all rookies in receiving. I think he's just bound to get into the end zone at some point. He got like ran down in the Cardinals game on that 40-yard slant play. I thought he was going to take it to the house, but he just got caught by one of the safeties there. Bryce Young had 5 touchdowns the last time these two teams met. And granted, the Atlanta Falcons have improved a lot, as we talked about on the defensive side of the ball, but I still think that there's some meat on the bone there. And the last point I'll make is we talked about it already. The Panthers are going to be in their black helmets this weekend. We are 3-1 against the Atlanta Falcons in those black helmets. Andy Dalton is the only loss in those the black helmets. I think PJ Walker won, Bryce Young won, and I think going back through, I think Sam Darnold won against the Falcons in the black helmets. So I think T Mac is going to get into the end zone for the first time this season, this week.
In our last podcast, I had a take that Tedero McMillan was maybe a top 15 receiver, I think was the official take that I had. So I'm going to give this one an A. The Falcons' defensive back depth, or let's say corner depth, because they added those safeties in the draft that have looked really good so far. But their corner depth it's just not there behind AJ Terrell, who's going to miss what seems to be an extended period of time. And Tedero McMillan already feels like a veteran type of receiver. So it's going to be a mismatch from the jump with this team. I think it's going to be kind of a shootout similar to how it was in week 18 last year. I think that really, I think the most intriguing part of this game outside of Tedero McMillan and just the Panthers offense as a whole is that the fact that the Falcons spent 2 first-round picks on edge rushers. Both of those guys, James Pierce and Jalen Walker, are from the Charlotte area, and both those guys were rumored to be potential Carolina Panthers in the draft with that top 10 pick that they had. So I think it's interesting that both of those guys ended up in Atlanta, which is just kind of fun to me. But yeah, I'm going to give this an A. I think that McMillan is an incredible receiver already. He doesn't have a touchdown yet. I think he gets on the board.
It's interesting too. The young edge rushers, Pierce and Jalen Walker, they're going to be going up against some movement along the Panthers' offensive line. Austin Corbett, the center, excuse me, and Rob Hunt, the right guard, are both on IR. I know Hunt's going to miss the entire season. Corbett at least 2 months. Corbett has not had a great year to start, so that loss isn't as important. But Rob Hunt was a Pro Bowler last year, if I'm not mistaken, and I think has been an All-Pro in his career with Miami. Really, really good player. So that's going to be a huge loss for the Panthers. Hopefully, they'll be able to mitigate his loss, because if they can't, we've already seen that Pierce and Walker can get in the backfield.
They look good. I'm really excited about their edge rushers, and it sucks that it's Atlanta of all teams that has them. But my first take here, I think that the Bills are going to beat the Dolphins. Obviously, that's maybe not the take part of this. I think that they're going to beat the Dolphins by more than double the current spread, which is at minus 11.5 in favor of Buffalo. Um, This is a classic Thursday night football special we get from the schedule gods. Dolphins obviously have had a players only meeting that happened after week one, by the way. Then they lost to the Patriots. In I think it was a pretty good game late. It came down to the last possession, if I'm not mistaken. And the Bills are just really, really good at what the Dolphins are terrible at. It's just a really bad matchup for Miami. Um, this this Bills team had like 250 yards rushing this past game against the Jets, and the Dolphins. I love Kenneth Grant. I think he's going to be a great pro. He is like the only good run defender on this in this front seven, really. And you have a secondary that's probably the worst in the league that Josh Allen is probably just going to take advantage of. So it's a really bad matchup for the Dolphins. And I think that the Bills are going to win by like 23 points or more. They already beat the Jets by like 20 points, and I thought that that was actually going to be a close game. So I think the Bills win by a pretty massive margin.
More than double the current spread would be more than 23 points. We'll say 24 or more points. You think the margin of victory would be in this game?
Yes.
All right,
It's
I'm gonna
going to
go.
be bad.
I'm gonna go B. I believe you. I think it's gonna be a blowout. I 24 points is just really really hard for
It's a
me.
lot. It is a
Yeah,
lot for sure. That's a
like that.
college spread.
That's like a Alabama, New Mexico State or something, or like Mercer or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I believe that it could happen. The matchup point is a really good matchup because James Cook is top five in rushing yards already. We know what Josh Allen can do running the ball and break and contain. And I think given that he didn't score any touchdowns last week, Josh Allen, because he came out of the game, I think the Bills are going to want to get him to score more. And I think that that Dolphins defense just really can't stop him. So the only thing that's holding me back from saying an A or an A plus is the fact that the take is 24 or more, and that's three scores if you get all of the 2 point conversions. But that's just a lot. So I'm gonna give it a B.
Fair. Fair. What's your next take?
We've been gassing up the Colts all episode, and I think they're going to take a commanding lead on the AFC South this week. If they beat the Titans, which I'm predicting that they will, they'll be 3-0, and all the other teams in the division will either be 0-3. The Texans could be 1-2 if the Jags win. The Texans could be, or excuse me, they could be 0-3 if the Jaguars win. They could be 1-2, and the Jags could be 1-2 if the Texans win in that game. I think the Colts have the better team than the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward is coming along, so this could be a close game. I like what I've seen from him. The Io Manor touchdown, while it's ill advised, was still awesome to see. Like a great play in general, but really good play from a rookie quarterback. I think the Colts have the play caller and Shane Steichen, the offensive scheme, and the defense to stave off the high level of regression that we saw from the New Orleans Saints last year. If you remember, the Saints scored like 48 or something against Carolina in week one, and then scored 40 against Dallas in week two, and then just fell off of a cliff after that. I think the rest of the Colts team is good enough, the defense especially, where even if they start scoring, we'll call it 20 points per game instead of 33 and 28 or 29, whatever it was last week, the defense will be good enough to keep them in games. The scheme will be good enough to consistently move the ball down the field. The Colts already faced a probably better defense than the Titans defense. Came away with the win last week. And the Titans defense has struggled early in the game, like with early game execution. And I think the Colts have the weapons to take advantage of this. So my take, the Colts are going to go 3-0, and pending the Texans and Jaguars game, could have a two or more game advantage on every other team in the division, depending how that game goes.
So I like this take. I'm still like I think it's gonna be relatively soon when the Titans get their first win. I'm not saying it's gonna happen on Sunday, but I do think they're probably better than maybe what people think. Which I mean, obviously they were the worst team in the league last year. Um, I really believe in Cam Ward. I think that I'm gonna give this a B plus just because the Colts we've talked about them kind of at length in this episode already. As much as I believe in them, I still have to see more of it. It kind of reminds me almost a little bit of the Sam Darnold Panthers in a way, where that team started 3-0 and then won like 2 or 3 games for the rest of the year after that 3-0 start, once they started playing higher competition. But even then, like, they've already beaten the Denver Broncos, even if it was in kind of a fluky manner. But I think I'll give it a B plus, just because I think it's hard to discount and discredit just how good of a supporting cast this Colts team has, including the play caller. Lou Anarumo, by the way, has been incredible. He doesn't seem to have been the problem with the Cincinnati Bengals defense, but we like that's a story for another time. The Colts defense, the additions that they've made, it's been all positive so far. So I'm gonna give this a B. I think Cam Ward could maybe pull off an upset here. Obviously, the counting stats haven't been particularly good, but I've been impressed with what I've seen, even if the weapons have kind of let him down in a way.
The Sam Darnold Panthers, the year you're referring to, we started 3-0, beat like the Jets, the Raiders. I don't know who the other team was. Week 4, the Panthers go into Dallas. I had COVID that weekend, so I was feeling horrible, and then I just had to watch my team get absolutely destroyed by the Cowboys in Week 4. That was awful. Hopefully, the Colts don't endure that this weekend. But I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Cam Ward is better than people realize. The stats aren't there just because the team is bad. Brian Callahan doesn't do him any favors. But if he weren't on such a bad team, he was the number 1 pick. He's going to be on a bad team. But I think as the Titans come along over the next couple of years, he's going to be able to show what he can do. But that's part of the reason why I'm picking the Colts in this game. The Titans team is just bad overall. Like if he were on like a better if he had a better supporting cast like the Colts, then it would be a different discussion. But I just think the Colts have too much talent for the Titans to have a great chance in this game. It could be a close game, but again, I'm just going to go with the Colts.
Cam Ward's best weapon in Week 1 against Denver was a 5th-round rookie tight end in Gunnar Helm. His best weapon in Week 2 against the LA Rams was a 4th-round rookie receiver in Alec Ayomanor. So that just goes to show you the level of talent that he's working with. This team like desperately needs some sort of receiving talent. Jordan Tyson, maybe, we'll see. But yeah, it's hard to bet on the Titans, even if I love what Cam Ward has done so far. My last take before we get out of here, I think Spencer Rattler and the Saints are going to beat the Seahawks in Seattle. By the way, Spencer Rattler, he's played 2 games so far with the Saints, and he's looked pretty good. He's had some impressive throws. He's played with timing. I think he's got some really functional arm talent. Kellen Moore, underrated quarterback guru. I think I don't think he got enough credit for what he was able to accomplish with Jalen Hurts last year. The Tyler Shuck pick, 40th overall. There were probably better uses for that pick if Spencer Rattler was A, going to look this good, and B, just be the starter all season anyway, which at this point he probably should be. The Seahawks defense, I think, is going to be a much, much bigger test than what the Saints have played so far. Obviously, the 49ers last week and then the Cardinals in Week 1. That Seahawks defense is so sick. Boye Mafi looks like a star right now. And obviously the interior defensive line between Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams, who is like an all-pro level player that not many people realize is as good as he is. It's going to be a tough task, especially like the run game is, not the best. Alvin Kamara is like ancient for a running back, and Juwan Johnson is like this team's de facto wide receiver 1, at least so far this year. He's gotten like 10 targets in each game so far. But I think Sam Darnold, he's not been great in Seattle so far. I think he's had a lot of mistakes. We're kind of seeing that old Sam Darnold come back a little bit. I haven't been particularly impressed by him. And, if you could just get like one or two vintage Sam Darnold plays combined with just even an average game from Rattler, which I think he's more than capable of at this point, I think the Saints could pull off an upset win against the Seahawks in Seattle.
This is probably going to be the lowest grade that we've done so far. I think I'm going to go. I don't want to give it an F because I'm going to look so bad if it actually happens. So I'll go D minus. I just think this is a very bad matchup for the Saints. The Seattle defense, I think, has improved week over week. Byron Murphy is looking incredible, the young defensive tackle. And I don't know. Like, I just Spencer Rattler's been good so far, better than what we expected. But I don't know if they have enough, like as a whole on offense, to put up the points that the Seahawks can put up. I know that Sam Darnold's been not very good so far, but Jackson Smith and Jigba's been pretty good. Kenneth Walker has had his moments. Like they have the team to be able to score. We obviously know that their special teams can score, given what happened last week, and just the defense is going to be so tough to go against. I don't know. I'm struggling to see the path for the Saints to win. Like, how do you think the Saints can win this game? What matchup can they exploit if you're going to be convicted on a Saints win here? And will you change your pick in the pick'ems to New Orleans?
Yeah, I should probably change that pick to reflect what I'm actually going to predict here. But I think the matchup that you'd probably want to exploit is Reek Woolen on the outside playing that kind of corner role. He hasn't been the most consistent guy in the world the last year, really. I know like the talent along this defense is just like incredible. The front seven, um, the DBs with Julian Love, with Devon Witherspoon. Nicky Manwari is injured already, but he's incredibly talented and promising. I think you're going to kind of want to exploit that second corner with Reek Woolen. Maybe you try and target him with Chris Olave. Maybe you match up like Juwan Johnson on him. Maybe you can catch the Seahawks defense lacking on one or two plays with some sort of schemed a deep ball to Rashid Shaheed. I think the formula is like you're going to have to down to down exploit that matchup. Hopefully you can kind of figure out the run blocking a little bit better than it has been in the past two games, and find some chunk plays. And obviously like you're going to have to get some Sam Darnold turnovers mixed in there too.
I agree with you there. I think if you can nickel and dime them throughout the game and control the clock, then there's a good chance there. I also worry about the Saints defense as well, but Sam Darnold can do and will do Sam Darnold things if given the opportunity. So that's why I'm going to give it a D, not an F, because it's not out of the realm of possibility that Sam Darnold could mess it up. To that point, though, I think like Seattle could be 2-0 right now. It was just Reek Woolen, like you mentioned, I can't recall the tight end. Jake Tongus,
Jake
I think
Tongs, yeah.
Tongs, my fault. Snatch an interception from him for the game, like for the win. So the Seattle defense and the team as a whole, I think, is good. But they're not invincible like some of the other teams are. So gonna give it a D. And if the Saints pull it off, I think that's gonna be one of your better takes so far.
We'll see. I think my best take still is the Ibuka one. He looks good,
Yeah,
man.
he's
He looks really
incredible.
good. With that, we're gonna get out of here. We appreciate everybody for watching, for listening. You can follow the show at 2P_conversion on Twitter. You can follow us on YouTube as well. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to our actual site itself at 2pointconversion.com. You can follow Jacob at Jacob LaQuire, myself at dj.png. And I'm not sure the next time we'll be live since I'll be in stadium on Sunday, but at some point we'll be back to recap week 3 of the NFL season. So with that, peace.